Hey, everybody. You are about to hear a brief retelling of the movie How to Eat Fried Worms. Enjoy the movie and enjoy. Billy and his family are riding in the car, and he is sickened by the sight of his little brother Woody gorging himself and becoming like chewed food himself. The foresters even had to pull over so the boy could vomit behind a tree. The family moved to a new town. Billy had many friends at his old school, and now he would have to make new acquaintances. The boys were already waiting for him near the school and agreed to stare at the new kid to make him uncomfortable. Poking the boy in the shoulder, they promised that they would meet again soon, but in a minute Billy was waiting for a nicer acquaintance. Erica offered to help him to find the right class. The girl herself is called a dildo by all the kids. The new kid had left his lunch bag on the shelf before entering the classroom, and the little bullies had stolen it. The principal introduced Billy to his new class and seated him behind Erica the dildo. In the cafeteria, the butt plug wished Billy the good appetite, and the boy tensed up and took out his lunch. When he tried to pour tea from the thermos, he saw a bunch of earthworms falling out of it. The girls were frightened and ran away, and the bullies, satisfied with their prank, surrounded Billy. Joe, the red-headed leader, offered to let the boy eat his lunch since he liked worms so much. "I love them," Billy replied, eating them every day, and threw one in Joe's face. Everyone laughed, but Billy quickly realized that he was going to pay for his impertinence. The principal came into the cafeteria and the boy had to throw the worms on his pants. Billy was incredibly annoyed by his little brother, who climbed up on the table and started singing a children's song. Before going to bed, Dad came into the room to support his son. He was also having a hard time at his new job. Billy complained that all the boys were at odds and were unlikely to accept him into their company. His father suggested that he should take the initiative. In class, Billy receives a note from Joe, which says "Worm Eater." Now the kids are chasing him and calling him names, and he has no one to blame for it, because he admitted it himself. Erica wants to be friends with the new kid, but Billy thinks that because of the worm he will be teased even more. At recess, another boy who has no friends joins Billy. He's thrilled that Billy threw a worm in Joe's face yesterday. He expected the redhead to hit the new kid with the ring of death and die, but not right away. He hit Adam, too, and now he's going to die of blood loss in 8th grade, and Joe's stomach is very painful, and there's even a mark on it where the poison is absorbed. In class, the bullies keep bothering Billy with their gummy worms. They don't leave him alone even on the way home, chasing him and shouting worms at him. Suddenly Billy stops and declares that the worms taste great. He eats them with milk and sugar. Sometimes he boils them or grills them. Joe doesn't believe him. The new guy throws up even a piece of worm. Then Billy blurted out that he could eat 10 worms. The boys bet that if Billy really eats 10 worms, Joe will come to school with worms in his pants, and if the boy vomits, he will have to do it. All 10 worms have to be eaten in one day before 7 p.m. tonight. Billy trapped himself and had to take the bet. At the same time, his dad at work poured coffee, broke the coffee maker, and lied to his boss about playing tennis with his wife. Then he was invited to play 2-on-2 against the boss and his wife. Joe sent Donnie to find out what earthworms are. No eyes, but an asshole or sphincter. The boys laughed at that word, and Billy had to eat 10 earthworms with their asses. It seems that Billy has found his first friends, but then red-haired Joe got in his way. Joe ordered the boys not to be friends with this worm eater. Billy wondered why everybody listened to him. He happens to be in charge, and he's also big, so he constantly threatens the other boys with force. Benji was appointed cook to prepare the worms. Alas, Joe's authority is too great and Billy's potential friends go after him. Our hero drives up to the house of Erica, who is into archery. Billy regrets that he threw a worm at the bully's head, but Erica liked it. The boy admits that he has a very weak stomach, he can't eat a lot of things, and even less worms. He's also sick of his little brother. His parents made him go with them to the daycare center and watch Woody's cheesy performance with the rest of the maggots. Billy confesses to his dad that he hates his brother, everyone loves him, and he's just a little imaginative. Billy also hates the local kids. The man learned from a colleague that tomorrow the boys will play soccer. It is a good opportunity for the boy to show himself because he is a great soccer player. Billy came to the soccer field, but there was no one there. All the boys were busy getting healthy worms to feed to the new kid. Adam suggested that Billy might not throw up. Worms are meat, too. Maybe they used to be afraid to eat chicken, but now it's okay. He was immediately forced to eat a worm and test the theory on himself. The boy immediately threw up. At night, Billy could not sleep. He decided to run away from home and then from the city, but already on the street the boy realized that it is better to eat worms than to be a bum and returned home. He sees worms everywhere, and his dad ordered him to look after Woody today. Billy decides to share his wisdom with his youngest, but he's just talking nonsense, picking his nose and talking about his genitals. Afterward, Billy stops by Erica's house and asks her to watch Woody because he's eating worms today. We learn that Joe is constantly being bullied by his older brother Nigel. He's scared of an ordinary worm when it gets on his face. Benji's gonna fry the worms in pork fat. The boys noticed the worm eater and chased Adam away to be in the company of losers like himself. The first worm was fried, oily, and slimy. He ended up right in front of Billy. The brace squirted worm juice right into his glasses. Billy mounted the fatty and sent it straight into his mouth. Now it had to be veined and swallowed, but the gang was chased out of here by the park ranger because they had started a campfire without adult supervision. Meanwhile, Erica suggested Woody throw a pebble and make a wish. The boys chased Billy, demanding that he swallow the worm, and he fell off his bike and finally put it in his stomach, but now they had to find a place to fry the rest of the worms. The kids arrive at Adam's uncle's house, who runs a diner. The boy decided to use his kitchen and cook the worm in an omelet. Alas, the dish ends up on the table of their manager, aka Kettle. The man put the worm on a fork and lived, praising the unusual omelet. The boys laughed and cheered until Joe showed up again and spoiled everyone's mood. Adam's uncle chased the kid out of the kitchen and threw out his worms, but the cook managed to fry 2 of them. To make the flavor more refined, Adam added soy sauce. The 2 fat worms in the fryer, Billy spooned into his mouth right out of the box. Their boy lived much more confidently and splattered Joe's face with the wormy innards. After that, the plug and Bradley were placed next to Billy. They make sure the new kid doesn't throw up and everything is fair game. Next, the boys pile into the kitchen without asking and start making a hell of a mess of whatever they can find in the kitchen with a very spicy sauce. Billy was sick to his stomach just smelling that gourmet dish. A red and incredibly spicy worm was pulled out of the pot, burning the boy's tongue, but he sucked it up anyway and immediately ran outside in search of water. Twitchy, upset by the mayhem in the kitchen, said that the boys will not get there again and in general he is leaving Joe's team. Suddenly, Skopka wanted to join Wormwood's team as well, and Adam finally gave Billy a drink. Joe ordered Benja to make sure that Billy would definitely throw up next time, although he'd almost poisoned him as it was. Billy's father was sure he was about to embarrass himself on the court, but it turned out that the boss was an even bigger sucker than he was, and his wife could beat the competition for both of them. Erica blurted out that the little guy who was eating ice cream on the grass was Billy's brother. Joe asked the little guy what made his brother sick, and he remembered all the times he'd seen it happen. After hearing about the dizziness, Joe ordered the worm man to spin the worm. The next worm was gradually fried with a magnifying glass. A sauce of marshmallow, ketchup, and canned tuna was added to it. Billy boldly put this Michelin dish into his mouth and swallowed it easily, but then the boy felt sick and fell to the ground. Erica ran up to Billy to see how he was doing, and the kid called her friend a chubby for some reason. Erica got upset and ran away. Benji rolled the next worm with a rolling pin and spread it on a sandwich along with peanut butter. As Billy shoved the nasty sandwich into his mouth, his parents came home. The father was glad his son had made so many good friends. There were 3 worms left, and as luck would have it, his parents called Billy home for a noodle dinner and he had to eat, because you can't go out on an empty stomach. Adam and Staples dropped by to see Billy. Joe is waiting for him by the river at the local witch who sells worms. There are 3 of them left on the team. Twitchy was punished after they trashed the kitchen. Billy asked Erica for help, but she took offense. Her friend turned out to be as stupid as the rest of the boys. But she told him that Joe's ring was just an ordinary ring that he was scaring everyone with. It's important to win this bet, and then everyone will stop obeying the red-headed bully. The boys gathered at the old witch's fishing house. They waited for the witch to leave and broke into her cabin. Donnie scared the chief with a stuffed fish, and everyone laughed. Joe seemed to be losing his credibility. Benji wanted to use his homemade machine to get the worms, but they fell right on his face. Donnie admits that he wants to quit Joe's team too, but he doesn't have the guts, so he hopes the redhead loses the bet. Benji made a smoothie of green worms, broccoli, and spinach, the food of the gods, which immediately went into Billy's mouth and spread on his chin. Donnie suggested further cooking a radioactive slimy dinner and stuck the worm in the microwave. But the worm suddenly exploded, covering the entire surface. Then the witch came back and the boys scattered, leaving only Joe and Billy. The old woman attacked them with a bunch of fish, but the boys were suddenly saved by a jerk in home clothes and distracted the witch. For a second the boys forgot that they were enemies. There were only a few minutes left before the bet expired, and the boys couldn't find the last worm for Billy to eat, but then an arrow stuck into a tree, to which the worm was tied. Erica bails out her friend, but Joe decides to cheat and throws the arrow into the pond. At that moment all his friends turned away from the redhead because he was cheating. "Jump in the water," shouted the spigot, and Billy dived for the 10th worm. There was no time to cook it. Billy put the raw worm in his mouth and lived on the last seconds of the allotted time. The whole company cheered. Nigel drove up to them and began to taunt Joe. Suddenly Billy stood up for his enemy and the other boys did the same, making very sad faces. Joe shook Billy's hand grudgingly. He took the death ring off his finger and let Adam throw it into the water. Alas, Billy realizes he cheated, too. One of the worms wasn't eaten by him, but by the headmaster's teapot. He honestly confesses this to Joe, and the two of them decide to put the worms in their pants. As they did so, they walked down the school hallway to the loud laughter of the other students.